Welcome to the Leaderonomics Show. I'm here with Stefan Sagmeister, who's been brought to Malaysia by Commercial Radio Malaysia. Stefan, really great to have you. Welcome to our show.
Thanks so much.
Right. Stefan's a great one of the world's renowned graphic designers. How did you get to where you got to? I mean, tell us a little bit about your story of getting to become one of the best graphic designers in the world.
Well, that be as it may be, but when I was 14 or 15, I played in very terrible rock bands.
Okay.
But one thing that did was it really made me interested in album covers. And at that age, I listened to a lot of rock music and looked at album covers.
Right.
And somehow got it into my head that this would be
Something
a lot of fun.
Obviously,
to do.
You were not that good in the rock band side of things, huh?
I definitely was not. No, I definitely was not. And I was smart enough to give that up very quickly.
Okay.
And but then I started working for a tiny little magazine that was in a neighboring town. And originally, actually, I wrote for them as a 15, 16-year-old.
This was in Austria?
It was in Austria,
okay.
yeah. And then discovered that it was actually much more fun, or that I had more fun to do the layout for them and
right.
Create the headlines, like draw the headlines.
Right. And this was at the age of 15?
Yeah, but it was a small magazine.
Yeah,
it was not
a major publication.
No,
yeah, but still,
yeah.
Okay.
And but from then on, really, it turned out that magazine also was quite involved in culture. So they organized a little jazz festival or a little protest thing there. So all that stuff needed graphics, and I did all that, and it was, fun to try that all out. And then eventually I wanted to go to art school.
Okay.
And applied in Vienna and wouldn't make it into the entry examination.
Really? For
failed
art school?
Failed badly.
There's an exam for art school too?
There is, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very competitive to get in. Well, it's the same art school that didn't take Hitler.
Okay.
Like Hitler applied to that same
well,
art school.
I don't know whether you want to be in the same breath as that, but
but
yeah,
that's
okay.
an interesting story. So basically, by not taking him, they brought us World War II. Otherwise, we would just have one more bad artist. Yeah.
Okay. So then what happened?
I went to a small private school instead for a year, and then applied again, and then got in.
Okay.
And really, really loved it. I think that I also, within my class in art school, was maybe one of the few students who really wanted to become a designer. Many of my classmates really wanted to be artists, but their parents told them, "Oh, you better, do something where you can earn some money."
Yeah.
And of course, that didn't really work out so well, because they then also didn't become, great designers, because they didn't really love
what they were doing.
It's
interesting that so early in life you figured out. I mean, this is the problem with most people, trying to figure out what your passion is. And if you find your passion, you tend to do really well in it. But it's interesting you found it so early in life.
I actually do think that is an advantage. Yeah, and I talked to musicians about it, or I see it with my new partner in the business. I do think that it's an advantage to figure out what you want to do early in life.
Right.
Also, I think it would make sense, because your brain, or our brains, basically develop until they're 25.
Yeah.
And
then we decay,
so
right?
if you can figure out early in your life what you're doing, and you're already developing your brain in that direction, I think it's an advantage.
Yeah. So then what happened? I mean, were there any roadblocks that you had to overcome, or obstacles along the way to becoming where you became?
Well, I would say, just the usual stuff, constant doubt of, is the stuff that I'm doing good, or, I think that was sort of like a biggie during art school.
Right. So how do you overcome those I guess, hiccups?
Basically just by working, doing more stuff. And I had a big break when we got offered the possibility to design posters for a very big and very serious theater in Vienna, and they had a lot of spaces on these columns that that are all over the best places in Vienna, and so we would design these posters for students, and then they were all over Vienna. And of course, the feeling that you would do something that was really truly visible, and for a theater that we all loved, was excellent. And those posters then really also were at the center of the reason why I managed to get a scholarship for New York.
Right. So you got a Fulbright. You got a Fulbright to New York, right?
Mainly because the Austrian Fulbright commissions were all theater goers. And when I went there with my portfolio, they had seen all those posters and had seen many of the plays, so we could talk about the plays and had an interesting discussion.
Fabulous. So you went to New York, and what transpired there? I mean, was there something inside? I mean, your career kind of took a, kind of went up from New York, right?
Well, it's when I was 18, I won a bet against my brother-in-law, and he lost it, so he had to pay a New York holiday. So with 18, I went to New York for the first time, and I felt immediately upon landing that this is the place where I want to be. It just felt right. It felt right in that same way. I don't know. If you're apartment hunting and you look at 20 and there is one that's just, that's it.
Fits you.
That's how New York felt to me. That same feeling in the stomach.
So now you actually got to live in New York.
Yeah. And loved it, absolutely loved it. The school that I went to was okay, but I loved being in New York. And again, I started to work or started to freelance while I was studying. And because I had gotten the Fulbright, I didn't have to select those jobs by how much they would support me, but basically on their merit. Like, is the job good? Is it possible to do something good? And so by the time that I graduated in New York, I had a portfolio together that looked like I've been working for a good long while, which also then had the incredible advantage. None of this planned, it all just happened that way, but it had that advantage that I never really worked as a junior designer because everybody just assumed that I had been working, and I didn't have to admit, I didn't go out of the way to correct that perception. So
afterwards are always right.
And I immediately started to work as a designer or as a senior designer.
So how did the whole Rolling Stones, the album cover thing come back again?
Well, that was quite a bit later from that, but after that I went back to Austria for a year, went to Hong Kong for 2 years, then worked for my hero, for Tibor Kalman, for 6 months, and then finally opened up a studio on my own. And also finally remembered that that's really what I wanted to do, design basically album covers. Of course, in the meantime, it was CD covers, but I said, well, I want to do a small studio, and that's what I want to do because that's why I became a designer. And so we went out, and I visited all record companies. They're all in New York and Los Angeles. And I think the portfolio was fine at that point, and they all said they're going to give me work, but none of them really did. And so for a while we did also other work, but I managed to do a CD cover for a band that a friend of mine or an acquaintance of mine was the lead singer, and that CD cover got nominated for a Grammy. That was a big break then, because the record companies, of course, follow the Grammys, and that sort of made, they knew me, meaning they had seen the work, but then they kind of like realized, okay, he can actually pull this off, like they can also deliver. And from then on, we got steady calls, and that steady jobs, and that really established the studio.
And you've won a couple of Grammys now, right?
We were nominated many times, and we won 2. Once for the Talking Heads and once for a Brian Eno, David Byrne albums. So both times for music that I really love.
Interesting. You're also now doing a lot of other things. One is this happiness study that you're currently conducting, and hopefully next year there's a film that's going to come out. Tell us a bit about that study and why are you embarking on such a happiness study?
Well, I think that one of the wonderful advantages of being a designer or even a graphic designer is that the field is so gigantic that you can do many, many things and still call yourself a designer. So in this case, we're doing this, we're making a documentary film on happiness.
Okay.
And the film basically is about trying out various strategies that a serious psychologist, who also now in the meantime became our scientific advisor, recommends as the most efficient strategies if your goal is to elevate your well-being.
Okay.
Now, I would think that that's, in my case, when I looked at the reason why I do most things that I do in life, when I really looked at them towards their end point, that's what I found I'm doing most things in life, actually to become happier. And I thought maybe there is a more direct way, because normally, of course, I take so many side ways to achieve that. Maybe there's a more direct way to do that. And so in the film, I'm trying out these three things, meditation, cognitive therapy, and drugs, to see if that's actually possible. And right now we are pretty far advanced. We're about 80% done with shooting. We will start editing next month, and then during the editing process we'll see what kind of holes we have.
To clean it. So have we found an answer to what will make us happy quickly? Or
have I found a quick answer to what makes us happy quickly?
Or we'll have to wait until the documentary comes out?
Well, I would say that what I found was very surprising to me. It's actually, everything is vice versa. I can give you some hints. Like, out of those three, I would have thought meditation would work the best and drugs would work the least. And it's been vice versa.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, it's an outcome that I'm not very happy with. I would have wished it would be exactly the other way around, because I have very little interest in psychopharmaca. Never took them, never would have, but found them to actually be quite powerful.
Okay, so we'll have to wait for a year for the full answer.
For the full answer, absolutely. Yeah.
So the other thing you do in design is that you help businesses to look at the world in a different way, and you help businesses expand through the work that you do. If you had to advise CEOs on how to embed design thinking or design philosophy into their organization, what are some things you'd recommend?
Oh, basically just take it seriously. That I had found that it actually works. It's luckily I'm not alone here, and we've seen recently many examples of companies that did incredible business by taking design seriously. The largest company in the world right now takes design very seriously. Of course, that's not the only reason that they're successful. But
and you're referring to Apple, right? Or
sure, yeah.
Okay.
But that's one of the reasons. It's by and large, though, I think the main reason Apple is successful is because they take the product very seriously, because they really try to make the best possible product possible. And that's, I think that's pretty straightforward and pretty good advice for any company.
And do you think fundamentally that everything is equal now in terms of product? Design becomes the differentiator, or design becomes the something that helps products to stand out? Or it's
I'm not sure if that is the case.
Okay.
I actually don't think that I mean, for one thing, it would be extremely difficult to differentiate, let's say, if I look at my phone, like, where does the product start and where does the design
So it's all embedded and
end?
integrated.
It's it's
one
almost
big-
impossible.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But let's say more closer to my own field, to communication design. Again, it will be extremely important that the product itself is good. I mean, for us, we wouldn't take it on otherwise.
Yeah.
Like, we don't, I just don't think it's good for us or for the client or for the audience that we take on a product or a service that sucks.
Yeah, yeah.
For one, I don't want to be involved in anything that, you know, puts lipstick on a pig.
Right. Exactly.
I don't want to lie.
Yeah, yeah. So you cannot lie in the product. So design just, yeah. Okay.
By and large, I think it doesn't work anyway. In the few cases that it does work, I don't want to be involved in it.
Okay.
So we normally work for products and services that we would use ourselves or do use ourselves or feel important that they exist.
Okay.
That makes things already much, much easier.
Okay.
We're gonna love the research process. I can tell all my friends that proudly that I'm working on it. The stuff that we will do is going to be authentic, much more believable to an audience. I do think that an audience can distinguish between an honest communication and a dishonest communication. We'll have more fun doing it. We'll very much likely like the people and they like us that do a product that interests us. So everything becomes much easier for everybody involved.
Okay.
And in that world, of course, I do think that specifically now when you're talking about the branding of a product, I think that I would give the advice to the CEO, finally come back to your question, is work with a very small company, whoever that is, because they're going to be much more focused and much more efficient. If see that you get something that really is distinguished and unique out of them, because you're going to have to spend so much less money promoting it if it's unique to start out with. And if you look at the big brands of this world, all of them, old, new, middle, let's say Coca-Cola, Apple, Google, AT&T, IBM,
McDonald's.
all of them, but let's say those five, all of them have been designed by tiny companies, mostly individuals. They stood the test of time. It's not a coincidence that they all come from these small companies because it's focused. So you'll be much better off going with any of them than with any of the international branding conglomerates.
Okay. You know, as I'm listening to you, and I'm just imagining, I'm sure many of our younger viewers will be thinking, hey, you know, Stefan did it. You know, it sounds very easy. Like, you know, I just did this. I like design. I did this, and I ended up becoming this great, renowned designer. If I'm a young person just starting out, you know, to make it in my career, or just starting out, and I realize I have a passion for design, or I have a passion to be successful in the design world, what advice would you give me? Because you know, you tell your story, it seems so easy, but yet I bet there's some nuggets of wisdom that you learn along the way.
Oh, I would just say that work your ass off on things that are worthwhile. You know, if you're in school, try out. There's absolutely much different directions as possible. Don't get stuck with a single thing, but try out in school. Try out as many things as possible, so that you have a rich spectrum of things to fall back on later on.
And also to help you identify your passion, I guess, like you did, right?
Yeah. Then after school, carefully research the kind of company that you might want to have yourself and work for them for a little bit. I wouldn't advise right out of school to go out on your own, because you're going to make so many mistakes that are going to be so time consuming that you might learn them much faster if you work for the kind of company that you would love to work for. Don't send out 1,000 resumes to 1,000 different companies you don't know. Like, first do the research, who is out there, and then try to work for your favorites there.
Okay, fabulous. We've been with Stefan Sagmeister, world-renowned graphic designer. Stefan, thank you for being on our show.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.